How's it going, guys? Football-ManagerYouthDevelopment.co.uk here. In today's episode of Football Manager Tactics A to Z, we're going to be taking a look at counter-attacking football. If this is the first video you have watched on the channel, please do remember to subscribe to the channel and of course press that like button.
Don't let the bass get you.
So whenever I think of good counter-attacking football teams, I always think of Jose Mourinho's Real Madrid team, potentially Sir Alex Ferguson's Man United team when he had the likes of Rooney in his prime and the pace of Cristiano Ronaldo, and to a certain extent probably Leicester last season when they won the Premier League. In terms of trying to make a counter-attacking formation on Football Manager, there's going to be a number of different ways that you can do it, but in essence, because the idea of counter-attacking football is to be really disciplined in terms of your defensive shape, the idea is that you're going to be winning the ball back, and when you do win the ball, that you need to be very explosive in the way that you attack teams, you know, make really direct runs at them, be fairly direct with the type of passes you're making, make the most of the pace that you have with certain players in your team as well. What I'm going to do, guys, I'm going to play around with this tactic that I've got on the screen at the moment. I've been having a look at some of the kind of player roles and stuff like that. So I've got the mentality on counter-attack, which obviously makes sense. I will need to have a little bit of a play around with the team shape, whether to keep it on flexible or potentially structured. I'm kind of almost thinking that with the flexible one, at least if we do win the ball back, then the fullbacks are more likely to get involved, things like this. In terms of team instructions, I've decided to go for a higher tempo. The idea is that we're going to be sitting slightly deeper and that we're going to be going at a high tempo so that when we do win the ball, we're going to be kind of moving it around quite quickly. And plus we've got that high tempo so that we're trying to close down the opposition a little bit more as well. I have put the fullbacks on look for the overlap, as I think that they might be quite good at kind of helping out when the team is attacking and trying to, you know, kind of be really explosive and things like that. I'm going to have a bit of a play around with the passing to space sort of thing as well, just to see if that works. And what I've also decided to do is go for more direct passing. Like I said, I'm going to have a little bit of a play around with this just to kind of see how it works. So I'll just get a match set up now and then we'll have a look just to see how it works on the match engine. Okay then, so having played a game just now, I've actually finished the game and it finished 3-0. It was fairly weird for me because this team, they're probably about 4 or 5 divisions below me, but they had about 55% possession of the ball, I think it was, and obviously we only had about 45%. Usually the way I like to set my teams up, I don't like to have possession for possession's sake, but I do certainly like to, you know, kind of have the ball fairly often and make good use of it when we do have the ball. So with the kind of a counter-attacking mentality, you are obviously relying on the opposition attacking you fairly often, and you do kind of concede giving the ball away to the opposition fairly often. But yeah, with my sort of fairly rigid defensive structure, even though the opposition had the ball a hell of a lot more in terms of the amount of shots that they managed to create and things like that, they hardly created any shots at all. Potentially there are a couple of things that I would have maybe changed with the tactic in terms of setting it all up, but I just wanted to show you this as a fairly quick example of how the tactic basically works in essence. So the team are attacking me here. What's basically going to be happening is that my kind of midfield and everyone's going to be in a fairly decent position. I've got 2 strikers up front here, and these are my 2 centre midfielders here. They're fairly close in terms of their position, which is not ideal, but they are in a sort of more defensive position. The idea, obviously, with the counter-attacking football is that we are fairly camped in our own half. You can see that my formation is quite narrow. Their formation is fairly wide, as you can see here. And I think that is the way that they did try to break us down. But as the scoreline suggests, and I'll show you the match stats after this highlight. But yeah, in terms of, you know, the amount of chances that they created and things like that, they hardly created any at all, to be honest. So yeah, what's basically going to be happening here, so he tried to cross the ball in, but my defender managed to intercept the ball fairly easily. The idea then is that we're trying to launch a counter-attack as quickly as possible. The one thing potentially that might change with this tactic in terms of the passing, so I was half debating with changing it to like maybe mixed passing, leaving it on retain possession, but make sure that my players are actually running at the at the opposition defence. I think that might have worked a little bit better. The amount of passes that we tried to do, because we were on the direct passing, the amount of passes that went astray was a little bit too high for my liking. So yeah, I do think potentially I would have changed it maybe to like mixed passing and then retain possession of the ball, but just make sure that my players are running at the opposition defenders as much as possible when they do get the ball. So this chance, for example, here, you can see that my fullbacks and my players are starting to get forward. We're not exactly outnumbering them in the middle of the pitch, but we are trying to break forward with the ball as quickly as possible. What is basically going to be happening now is that my two central midfielders should start making a run forward. There goes my left fullback, who is overlapping the defensive midfielder. I think he doesn't actually get the ball, but he tries to play it forward as quickly as possible. And unfortunately, on this particular chance, the defender kind of gets there just to make the clearance. But you can kind of see the principle of what would be happening here. Potentially, if we were retaining possession of the ball, we would have won it back here with the left back, kind of played the ball forward a little bit more. And you can see here that when we do have the ball, the sort of opposition are going a little bit more narrow in terms of their shape and things like that. So I do think if I was to kind of play around with this tactic a little bit more, then I certainly probably would have, gone for the retained possession. But I'm very happy with the sort of defensive structure and the kind of shape of how the whole team's set up. I'll have a real quick look at the kind of tackles and things like that everybody was making. And you can see that the amount of tackles was fairly well spread throughout the team. So that means that everybody was in a fairly good defensive position. And, everyone was kind of willing to put their foot into a tackle and things like that, which to me, I'm fairly pleased with. In terms of kind of things, so you can see that there were a lot of stray passes, especially from my central midfielders, my fullbacks as well. They weren't exactly too prolific with their passes. This centre back here, for example, his passing success rate was near enough only 50%, which is very, very poor. But yeah, the amount of like interceptions and things that he did actually manage to make was pretty decent. So yeah, fairly happy with that type of thing. I'll show you the actual match stats just before I wrap this video up. But yeah, you can see that the opposition, although they're a much weaker team than us, they did have a lot more possession of the football. They did manage to make a hell of a lot more passes than us as well. But in terms of how successful they were with everything, they just simply weren't really successful at all. So they didn't have any shots on target. They didn't create any clear-cut chances. And so, yeah, all in all, it's fairly, quite a good way. If you do have some quite skillful players up top, but you've actually got quite a decent defence, which is exactly what Mourinho did with his Real Madrid team. He knows that he, had the pace of people like Ronaldo and people like that in his attack, but he also had the really good defense. So he was very happy to sort of sit back, just soak up a little bit of pressure, and then use the pace and the flair of his more attacking players to hit other teams on the counter attack and just see if he can score as many goals as possible. But yeah, certainly quite happy with the way that this tactic worked. And yeah, so I'm going to call this the end of the episode here, guys. In the next video of the Football Manager Tactics A to Z, I'm going to be having a look at the defence. So that will be for the letter D. We're going to be having a look at the defence. If you have enjoyed this video, please do leave a like on the video. Of course, subscribe to the channel, and we'll be back very, very soon for some more Football Manager videos. Thanks for watching.